Halito, and welcome to Native Chalk Talk, a podcast by natives for all. Here we're keeping our Native ancestors' stories and history alive, while also sharing with you our Native culture, traditions, and more. I'm Rachel Youngman, a Choctaw originally from Anadarko, Oklahoma. I hope you'll enjoy this journey with me as we learn from our Native American guests. And I hope you'll do me a favor. Feel free to like and share these episodes. I so appreciate it. Yakoki.
You're listening to part 2 of this series.
I'll read to you from the Muskogee Daily Phoenix and Times-Democrat from June 16th, 1920. Wife arrested, murder charged. Mrs. Adam Wilkins and Harrison Humphreys accused of killing interpreter. Mrs. Adam Wilkins is accused of the murder of her husband, Adam Wilkins, Indian policeman and interpreter, whose body was found on the railroad track near Howe on May 27th last. Harrison Humphreys, a part Indian said to be in love with Mrs. Wilkins, is charged with the crime. Both are in the Sequoia County Jail at Poteau, Oklahoma. And then it goes on to say, body placed on tracks. Wilkins' mutilated body was found on the railroad track between Howe and Heavener. His face was stabbed several times, his head almost severed from the body, and a bullet hole was found through his head. The man was murdered, and the body then hauled to the railroad and placed on the track to make it appear that Wilkins had been killed and mangled by a train, officers declare. And again, you painted to me a picture of a deeply unhappy woman, one who may have witnessed her world just slowly unravel. And, I've wondered, the one thing that I hadn't focused on before that I'm just thinking about now is there was gossip that there was kind of this maybe love feeling between those two people. Do you think that she was unhappy with Mr. Wilkins, Adam, because what do you think she was having an affair with Harrison?
I think she was an alcoholic and he was probably supplying her with liquor.
Oh,
Adam was not, he was trying to eradicate whiskey. So I think that gives it a personal angle. Like he
makes
was
sense.
trying to eradicate
Okay.
whiskey, and his wife is a drinker and she's drinking with a neighbor when he's not there. And he was like a coal miner and truck and what a coal miner and what they say, a truck farmer. And he was living
Yeah.
next door to her with his brother, and he was probably going over there and drinking with her while Adam had even confronted him and told him to not come back.
Oh,
So yeah, absolutely, it's a very small town.
yeah.
And then also, white people are starting to move into the town. And before that it was all Choctaw territory, and it was all owned by Choctaws, and now all of a sudden it's a lot of white people moving in, and she looks to me like she wanted to be with a white person. The whiter they were, the more power and status. Obviously her Choctaw people were losing power and status, so it wasn't that uncommon, I think, for Indian women to say, well, I'm gonna marry a white guy. So she does.
Right.
She marries a guy named Curtis within 6 months. By December 24th, I think, after Adam dies. It doesn't last very long. And, then she marries another person later on. I can't ever remember that person's name, but
Dan Chaplin, I believe.
Dan Chaplin, yeah. So Dan Chaplin was in her life, but this guy Curtis, when she marries him, there's no witnesses from her family on the marriage license. When she marries Dan Chaplin, Watson Billy's name is on the marriage license.
Okay.
So it obviously was like back, in the fold of her family, because Watson Billy was her brother-in-law.
Oh, right. So her sister Sophie married Watson Benton Billy, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And you know what? We know that there are a ton of Billies out in Oklahoma. So
Yes.
shout out to you, Billies.
Yeah.
If there's any connection here, please reach out to us so I can make sure we connect you with Amy.
Yeah, we're your complicated cousin.
Right, exactly.
Well, I know one person who at least has photographs of my family. That's, I believe, still around, as Ola Mae Draper's son, Leonard. And Jennifer, the councilwoman, Jennifer. What's our councilwoman? I can't remember her last name.
I don't remember her last name.
Okay, Jennifer, we forgot your last name, but
we apologize.
but we did find out that she has a connection to Leonard Draper. So
okay.
we're just at the Choctaw gathering, which is why it's good to go. So my brother,
Right.
found that out. So maybe we can contact her and see if we can get the last few pictures, because
Yeah.
after the murder happens, like I said, within 6 months she's married to this guy Curtis. She has a baby with him, and the baby dies, and then she has another baby with him, and then he's gone from the picture.
And that
And
baby's name was Naomi, right?
Naomi Curtis.
Okay.
She Ola Mae knew her, so Ola Mae, I've got a direct description of her. She was a cripple. She had blonde curly hair,
Aw.
light curly hair. She they at one point a hammer fell and hit her in the head. She didn't make it past. It's hard to tell, but she's buried right next to Liffey, but the dates on some of the gravestones are incorrect. So
Isn't that the way it went? It makes
yeah,
us
so I
that
don't
are
know if
trying to research just it's so hard.
so she's either 3 or 5 when she dies, but
Wow.
So back to Liffey, like as a character in the murder, I don't believe that she murdered him, but they said like they tried to sweat it out of her. There's the trial was so, like you said, they didn't have any soap operas or TV, so it's such a big deal that they moved it to a theater.
Wow.
So and they
People
couldn't
came
even
from
fit
all
it.
over.
Yeah, they couldn't even fit everybody in. I don't know if the whole trial was there, just her trial, but they had moved it to the theater. And I wanted to say that I have this book called Death from Heavener's Newspapers, 1904 to 1921, Poteau Valley Genealogical Society. What an awesome place that is. The
Really?
ladies in
Okay.
there were so helpful. It turned out this one lady that I met, and you know how it is. I was at the house cemetery talking to the guy who takes care of it, and
Oh,
I went
cool.
over to the gas station. I was telling them what I was looking for, and they're like, "Oh, you need to go see my aunt over at the Poteau Genealogical Society. Tell her Lucy sent you."
That's amazing. And that's how it goes in Oklahoma. There are a lot of places, it's just like that. And that's the way, that's why you have to go boots on the ground when you're
Yes,
researching.
that's so hard. I really, like I said, getting this book was really helpful. The lady just was interested in murder, and death.
Hmm.
Yeah. And
Right.
so she went, one of those people. So she went to work. So when I got to the Poteau Genealogical Society, she knew all about the murder.
Did she
She's like,
really?
oh yeah. And not only that, but one of
How
the other
random
ladies
is that?
there, the other ladies that was there, she goes, oh, Perry, not Perry, Curtis. Oh yeah, that guy married my aunt too. And then he ran off, and
Oh,
I'm like, while we're looking up her marriage, who she married. I'm like, okay, whatever, who was that guy?
that is so interesting.
Johnny Curtis. But that's how it is, in small towns. So I don't know I didn't have time to track down whether that was the same guy, but they were so wonderful. I want to go back there so bad.
Amazing. We love them.
Yeah, they're really, really great. And so what's interesting is that in this book, all of the articles from the Heavener Ledger are in here in this
Wow.
one book.
Okay.
So I don't have, I have them I had bad copies, lots of bad copies.
Yeah.
But what I found interesting is that, the first person that they suspect is somebody named Perry, Daniel Perry. And so
Okay.
they arrest him. They think that they say Perry is a full-blood Choctaw and is said to have had trouble with Wilkins sometime since, and there's still ill feelings between the two. So they're like, well, maybe he's the one who killed him. But then he says that on June 1st, Perry met with Wilkins' son, so that would have been Jeff, and asked him if his father had come home the night before. The boy answered no, and Perry went home and told his housekeeper that Wilkins was dead. So he knew about the murder, but then he has an alibi, so they let him go. They're like, okay, well, it wasn't him. So then that's when they pick up Liffey and Humphreys. And I just find this interesting. This is the one where they say the prisoners were brought to Heavener and spent the night in jail. The next morning, they were sweated by Marshal Burns, who said secured a written confession from Mrs. Wilkins after sweating it out of her, whatever that means. So,
Whoa.
yeah. So then the witness was extremely sulky and reluctant to testify. Well, no kidding.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
But
What?
I love this one. Mr. Adam Wilkins, who agreed to turn state witness to Mrs. Adam Wilkins, who agreed to turn state witness at the preliminary hearing in Heavener some weeks since, told the prosecuting attorney that she had no evidence to offer at all that the previous said regarding Humphrey's guilty was false. Hence, the case was nulli processed, whatever that means. They dropped it. Our officers seemed to be wonderfully efficient in tracing the smell of chalk beer to some lonely widow's home or capturing a moonshine still. But the capture of any criminal of a broad gauge seems to absolutely beyond their power. Queer, ain't it? We sincerely hope the sheriff will be elected next November will prove more efficient.
Interesting.
Isn't that fascinating?
Totally fascinating.
So, like, there was election going on.
Right? Add that to the checklist.
Add that to the checklist, and and they really kind of say, yeah, you're chasing down this poor, Indian widow, and
Yeah.
and it does mention capturing moonshine still. So I'm like, moonshine was involved, oil was involved. It's not like, oh, who would want to kill him? It was like, which one did it?
Which one did it? Right, exactly. And poor Adam is in the crux of all of this. I mean, he was just a good man
really
doing good things for his community,
really
had an unhappy wife.
Yeah. And we can even sympathize with her. Like, why would you be unhappy? Well, it wasn't the greatest time to be a woman.
Right. And, she succumbed. Yeah. She succumbed, like a lot of Native Americans did, including the Choctaw, to the drink. Yeah. And that we were targeted for a reason. You mentioned once to me that your Uncle Jeff was, he was just a young teen, somewhere between 11 and 14 years old, and he was taken to view Adam's dismembered body. I mean, that kind of trauma, can you imagine? I mean,
he was the sweetest man, too. Jeff was just a sweetheart. He had those big Choctaw ears. I remember when I was 10 and I went there and I was just playing with his ears. They were like velvet. He was such a sweetie. And they took us to meet Sophie. So the next character maybe I can introduce is Sophie Billy. So Sophie Billy was in the mix, and she was still alive when we went back there when I was 10. When I went back there when I was 10, it was right around when we were starting to get our degree of blood papers. Mm-hmm. So we went there, and my grandpa Woody got us papers. It was a real time of change in Choctaw Nation, actually a good time where we were gaining some power finally, getting some power back after, many years of not having a lot of power. And they took us to meet this lady, Sophie, this little old lady in an Indian old folks home. And I remember sitting on her little twin bed and holding her hand, and she read to us out of the Choctaw Bible. She just looked like this tiny little woman.
Was she speaking in Choctaw?
Yeah, she I don't know what happened to those cassettes, but she was reading the Bible in Choctaw. And I just sat and held her hand. And then, when I grew up, I'm like, holy cow, she lived another 20 years after.
Wow, your family has good Choctaw genes.
She's the one who lived the longest, and I'm just like, wow, that was like, because I think of my big sister who's 5 years older than me, and I'm like, that'd be like if I could have talked to my sister about me, like,
right.
But I don't know how much English she spoke, but I mean, and those old timey Choctaws were quiet. They didn't talk about a lot of stuff,
No. It was definitely, it's been hush hush for so many years,
and you can see why it was hush hush. So. But anyway, I'm just like, wow. In the 80s, I was busy raising kids. I wasn't I didn't live in Oklahoma.
Right.
It's a long ways, and it never even occurred to me
Oh, the
that.
questions you would have asked her, right? Oh my God.
But
I
at
I
least,
totally feel you.
but at least I got to meet her daughter Ola May, and we would visit her when we go back there. My brother and
Yeah,
her, and she showed us some stuff. But also, you don't want to be rude and go, "Tell me about that old stuff." You want to say,
I
"How are you
know, right.
doing now? And how's your health? And would you like some tacos?"
Yeah, right. But I can't help but ask. Please tell me all the things you know.
And then also you're just
Oh,
getting a perspective of a girl who's, my great grandma died when she was 11. So, but
mm-hmm.
but she did say she was a sweet woman. So I'm hoping that towards the end of her life that she was a Christian. She went to church. So I'm hoping maybe she found her way back to some peace. She lived in how?
Yes.
She lived in the town that this happened, where she was indicted, her
She
whole life.
still lived there.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my
She lost
gosh.
her house. Like they had a big 2-story house. This is another thing I really love help with. It was the Wilkins house. It was a big 2-story house. It burned down at some point. I don't know when. I don't know if there's pictures of it. I've never been able to find them.
Mm.
And I think that I have a document that, on a scrap of paper document, a bad copy document, right?
Right.
She loses her house within 2 years of Adam's murder, and I think it was that house.
Mm.
And foreclosure for taxes. So that was one way they often got property away
So
from an.
true. Yes.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm hopeful. I think of her a lot, and I don't think she was like happy.
It doesn't seem like it. And when I was first learning more about her, I judged her a little more. And now that I hear a different perspective, I think that really it does put it in perspective. This lady right here behind me, if you're watching
Yeah,
YouTube, you guys, her name is Rosa Coley. She is my great great grandmother, and she has a very similar story to your family, where her mother, Sophie Coley, was married to what the newspaper said was a prominent Choctaw named Joseph Coley. And long story short, um, their house was burned down. They lost everything because she had been married to a guy that was beating her, JB Drake, and the dad Joe and his son Edmund went and killed JB Drake because he burned down their house. And from there on out, it all went downhill. They
right,
all lost everything, and
right,
the mom Sophie, and they had like 12 kids or something, and Rosa was one of them. The mom Sophie ended up later, the last thing I found about her was she was a maid living in a house for some people, and serving them. And what's sad too is Rosa ends up having 3 children, all by different men. She got married maybe 6 or 7 times to one of these. This is my great great grandfather. So their daughter Ella, she gave up to a white guardian who wanted her land, sold her to the white guardian for $3,000. And JD Anderson was the guy's name. And also her oldest daughter, Mary Bell, was also sold to the White Guardian. And Ella, all growing up, hated her mother. She just couldn't imagine how anyone could give her up at 3 years old to this white man. And until her dying day, she did not like her mother. And I go back and forth. I'm like, yeah, how could you do that, Rosa? And then on the other hand, I'm like, what was Rosa going through? Who even knows what was happening at the
right.
time? Maybe she was
What power did
forced.
she have? What power did she
Yeah,
have?
right. Especially as a woman.
Oh yeah, and
So,
people were just being murdered with impunity. You could pretty much murder Indians at that time in Oklahoma in the 1920s, in
mhm,
particular, with impunity. Like nothing
you
was
really
going to
could.
happen.
Because they were
What?
seen
What?
as dirt, as trash, as not worth anything, except their money, their land was the only thing that was worth anything.
Well, this whole pseudoscience was constructed to say that they were a dying race. They were inferior. They were savages. It's right in our Declaration of Independence that we're, you know, merciless
Hmm.
Indian savages.
Merciless Indian savages.
And
Yep.
so it's like when you're taught that, and then you're like, oh, they don't deserve to have this land. They're primitive. They don't deserve to have this money. And then once greed gets involved, just forget it. I don't know what happens to people, but they lose their minds and they lose their moral compass. And
That's so
and
sad.
and so you look at that and think, okay, so, how did you get through that? Like, how did our people get through that? And then I
Mm-hmm.
think, like, I look at my dad's life, and, if you guys get a chance to listen to his stories. So the thing that I wish most and I hope is that Adam and Liffy, that they can see my dad, that their descendants lived a beautiful life.
Mm-hmm.
He had a great life. He's happy with his life. He made it. He's
Yeah,
90.
he's 90.
He's 90 and he's always, he's had a happy life. He's has friends. He's had a good career. Like, wouldn't they just be like, oh, thank goodness it got better?
Right. Yes. And maybe the fact that they did move him out of that area did maybe it saved his life. You never know. They
Right,
moved him for a reason.
right.
Well, and I still want to pay homage to Adam
Yeah.
Wilkins. You shared with me some of his own words that you mentioned earlier that were in Choctaw, but you were able to have them translated, which is amazing.
My brother really worked on that. It was a lot, and he finally got it
Oh,
done.
it's a gift. It's such a gift. And it was beautiful for me to actually see those words in Choctaw as well. But the English translation says, at this present time, I am doing well, sitting here writing a little bit here at the Albion Paper Mill. However, a few days ago, a young man, a great friend of ours, Joel McCurtain is his name, 38 years old. He lives in the community of Spring Hill. And so on February 4th, 1915, at 4 o'clock p.m., his friends, his relatives, his wife, his one little boy, and also his one brother, Mac McCurtain, he part ways with them. However, he died a good death. All of that are still living. Our Lord Jesus Christ did the work and died for it. His spirit is filled with joy. He knows of what all the spirit will do. His young brother hasn't been well for a long time. And so, since he's been really sick, when he was laying there, soon he died. The Spring Hill Church here, he really pulled them and really worked for them. And so, his death, we being part of the community, we were extremely sad. LaFleur Circuit here, as for the people we worked with right now, this young man is at rest. Moreover, this is very true. All of us as well will be at rest. Our time is coming. And because of that, the heavenly word, we, the determined workers, will continue on carrying out the will from the word. And so the body that is made of the world will soon, when it will be awakened, we will be here in the world and then soon it will die. Therefore, our Savior Jesus Christ on his last days will come from the clouds and will rise. We, the people who are alive together, the workers of God, will be worthy. The day when the Son of Man will come, the time will be right. We will not know it. We will awaken and shall search for him. This young brother went before us. All right, my brothers and sisters of Christ. As for Christ, the determined works we do for him will be worthy. Y'all's brother in Christ, Adam J. Wilkins, church leader. Now, again, that's translated to English, so some of it is kind of choppy as far as the translation goes, but I absolutely love that because it shows how positive he is and how it's like
Yeah,
we have something to look forward to after we
right.
die. Um, so beautifully said.
Yeah, that is really beautiful. Very beautiful. And I
Wow.
think, I look at my family and I think, we're an honorable family. My dad is a good
Hmm.
man. Like
Yeah.
he was a truck driver and worked in an oil refinery. You know, he's an honorable person. My brother is an amazing and honorable man. And he keeps
Hmm.
his word. He's a good worker. He's a culture bearer. And my sister had 9 children. I didn't say this yet. So,
I
like
did
I
not know
told you,
that. Wow.
my dad was the bottleneck, but my sister then had 9. So the DNA,
She made up for it.
she made it first. I just had 2, and my brother had 2, but my sister. So,
I
and
love
they
it.
go to the Choctaw gathering, and they they run for princess, and it's like, yeah, it came through. It came through like that.
And it wasn't all in vain, you
No,
know?
that Choctaw spirit came through and it exists in us, and the
Yes.
history and the honoring of the history and the fact that people didn't give up. And I look at the Choctaws, I mean, they just rebuilt And then they
They
rebuilt
rebuilt.
it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
It's
it's,
beautiful.
I think that's, and I wanted his story to be in the record. And when I started listening to your podcast, I was like, I really appreciate this, because I wasn't sure how to get it into the formal record. It was hard because it's such a difficult story.
Sure.
You
But it
start
is
to,
part of history. It is.
yeah,
It
and
happened.
yeah, I mean, when you start talking about it, people are like, like,
Right.
that's
Oh,
really
we don't
gruesome.
want. Thanks for your
So,
lovely story you sent in, Amy. But
so so I appreciate that, more than,
yeah,
like I said, more than you could know. And Liffy also,
absolutely.
to show her, like I said, I really want to show her in a complex light, instead of, oh, she was bad and she probably did it, and
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
said some mean things about her husband, and she obviously was an unhappy person at that point, and I hope she found happiness. She
I
died
hope she
young,
did too.
you know
Yeah.
she,
Only 50.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
It's well said. And I'm glad you want to honor them, because that's what this is all about. It's about preservation, the good, the bad, the ugly,
right,
right? Not just all the
right,
happy stories,
right,
and really paying honor to all of them. You've called this story a broken line, and that really resonates, because this wasn't just one tragic moment. It was the fracture that disrupts generations, but yet you all have rebuilt. What
right.
do you think your family might have been like if Adam hadn't been murdered?
Well, I think that it's dangerous to, go there, because of course we don't know, like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the butterfly wing effect. Who knows?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but I think that, I think what matters is that he would have been a grandfather to my father, and
Hmm.
that would have been so lovely for my father to have that. And so what I'm left with is for us to be good grandparents to our grandchildren. That's how we can repair that, is I can be a good grandmother to my grandchildren.
Yes,
And
yes.
we're here, we made it, and we can be loving, and have his legacy live, even though he died, by being kind, by spreading the good, and by being forgiving, but having forgiveness, and also, like him, having firm boundaries, like
Hmm.
being willing to sacrifice in order to, honor what we think is right. I mean, he made the ultimate sacrifice. I don't want to make the ultimate sacrifice, but I do.
Right,
But I want to,
right.
I want to live in a good way. Like, I want to live in a good and spiritual way. So that's what I take away from it.
Absolutely.
It probably would have been an easier and more direct if he hadn't died, but I
Hmm.
wouldn't be here.
That's true. We wouldn't have you. You wouldn't, your beautiful
Exactly.
grandkids wouldn't be
Exactly.
here.
So thank
Yeah.
you to all the Choctaws that came before me and everything you went through. And,
Amen.
for me, I always say, like, I think when I'm whining and sniveling and unhappy, I think about the people on the Trail of Tears. And I just imagine them looking at me and saying, shut up.
I thought
You
it was
got,
going to be something like words of wisdom, but I love it. Shut up, Amy, and
you
pick
got
yourself
nothing.
up.
You
And
got nothing to whine
same,
about.
Amy, same.
This is, you're loved, you're fed, you're housed,
Mm-hmm.
be grateful.
Be grateful.
Be
I love
grateful.
that. Well, your years of research and your love for your father, who is wonderful, and family ancestors really show. So thanks for sharing. Before we go, are there any words of wisdom you'd like to share with us today?
Um, I guess my words of wisdom are that when you look at the little children in your life and the little children around you, remember that they have these powerful stories too.
Mm,
And, remember to ask them about that. Remember to tell them their own stories, because right now they're being inundated by other people's stories, cartoons and movies, and at every turn. And my fear is what will get lost is our own stories, our
Absolutely.
family stories. So I think remember to tell your children your stories.
Well
And
said.
one time my daughter and I went to an elementary school and we were doing a presentation about Choctaws to this elementary school. And we started asking, what story do you have in your family? And a lot of them were Hispanic kids. And it was just remarkable. They were pretty little and they knew they're like, oh, my grandma came across the Rio Grande. And, I was like, this is
Right.
important. Yeah.
That's amazing. I didn't even think about that, about asking them, what can you tell us about your family?
Yeah.
And then make sure our kids do know those
Yes.
stories.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Good
that's
stuff.
my words of wisdom. Keep sharing the stories, and gosh, you're so fantastic about making stories that we can just sit and watch one after another on streaming. Our eyes.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I love to hear them myself. It's partly selfish because I want to hear these stories. They're so fascinating.
Yeah, I really appreciate all the work that you do to have this happen.
Thank
My
you.
family. I just want to really acknowledge my brother and all the work that he did to to encourage us to get back involved with with our culture, or me anyway. and
Yeah,
and my dad.
absolutely.
Yeah, and my mom who passed 4 years ago, she was such an encourager of us. uh Even though she wasn't Choctaw, she was a culture keeper.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And thankful for that for sure. The legacy of Adam Wilkins, the echoes of how Oklahoma in 1920 and the resilience of your family, all of it reminds us that history lives in us. And
Yeah.
sometimes breaking the silence, like you did today, is what begins the healing. So Yakoki for joining us on Native Chalk Talk, Amy.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Native Chalk Talk. Be sure to join our community on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and check us out at nativechalktalk.com. Stay tuned for the next episode. You're going to love it. Yakoki. Thank you, my friends.